When a recent college graduate vanished, but her dog seemed to be taken care of during the time she was missing, fingers pointed at a man who had a key to her home. No one knew that 13 years prior, this man had confessed to the murder of his parents when he was only 12 years old. Yet, because he was a child, the punishment didn't fit the crime, and he was released to kill again. You are such a genuine gem. Thank you for clicking on my video. I'm Brooke Makenna. Today's case is about a killer child, but also what happens when they are not properly punished or properly rehabilitated and what can occur in the years to come. So I think it's very important to discuss this case. I have a playlist of killer children down below if you would like to dive into that world, but it is something that needs more research. So before we dive in, let's take a moment for our sponsor, Love and Pies. This is the coziest, heartwarming game with such a creepy twist. And of course, I love that. It's perfect for those of us who need a little mystery to relax. In Love and Pies, you're rebuilding your mother's burned down cafe and trying to make it into a thriving business again. And meanwhile, you're also trying to unravel the mystery around where your mom disappeared to. It's within a small town, so there's small town gossip, there's unexpected romance, all while trying to uncover the truth about your mother and exactly how the cafe was set on fire. The storyline is like watching a crime drama. You cannot stop watching, and if that isn't mysterious enough, they are offering right now a brand new Gothic pass. This will allow you to help rebuild a historic manor and save it from demolition. You're restoring it to its full glory, and you will also get stunning Gothic style decoration. So if you click to download Love and Pies this week, Love and Pies and I are going to be giving you a gift, a free gift via the in-game inbox if you play to day 3.
I think you guys will love how calming it is to merge items and complete the orders.
So you can download for free and get your free gift delivered to your inbox if you download Love and Pies right now. Now let's get back to the story. So it was 2006 in Alabama, and Lori Ann Selsinki was a 24-year-old in Auburn. She was a recent college graduate at Auburn University, and she was then working at a mental health facility, and she lived in this manicured trailer. She was very happy at the time. She had a Yorkie dog named Peanut who lived with her as well. Now, Lori was known as a very warm person, very friendly, very outgoing. She had grown up with an older brother, Paul, and her parents, Arlene and Casey, who were from New York State. But they then moved to Alabama, and they had a farm, and animals were often around their home, and Lori absolutely loved taking care of them. Her parents said that she was always a great girl, a great daughter, and she graduated high school as her valedictorian and went on to Auburn, where her parents had actually bought her that trailer in order to move closer to the college. She would master in psychology and have a minor in criminal justice, and she graduated top of her class. The work she was doing afterwards was exactly what she wanted to do, and she was very fulfilled. So on Saturday, June 10th of 2006, Lori had plans to go have a girls' night at one of her best friend's houses. This was Lindsay Braun, and they were going to have drinks and watch a movie, and Lori called Lindsay around 6:30 p.m. letting her know she was going to go stop at the store, grab some of the drink mixes, and then she would be over later that night. Now, Lindsay would hear one of their other friends on the phone as well, and Lori told Lindsay she would be there in a little bit. So they ended the phone call. However, Lindsay waited and waited, and Lori never arrived. Lindsay began calling her, leaving her voicemails on her home phone, and she continued to do so all weekend, never getting an answer. But it was Monday the 12th that Lindsay knew that something had happened to her friend. You see, Lindsay and Lori both worked at that same mental health facility, and Lori did not show up for work for her shift. Lindsay began telling her bosses, her coworkers, that Lori didn't show up, and she then wasn't there at all for that day, and everybody knew that was strange for her. The next day was the same outcome at work, so Lindsay and another coworker decided to head to Lori's home to actually go and check on her. This was June 13th, and they would find Lori's car, which was a 2005 Mazda Tribute, was not in the driveway, and her door to her trailer was unlocked. When they entered the trailer, they found that the air conditioning was on, but there was no signs of Lori. However, someone was inside. Her little Yorkie named Peanut. He was in his crate. He seemed happy, well fed. He wasn't barking or whining, and his crate was clean, as though he'd been taken care of. But Lindsay also knew that Lori would have never left Peanut behind for any amount of time. Lindsay knew Lori's house well, and so when she was walking through, she was seeing if anything was out of place, and that is when she noticed in the kitchen there were no rugs on the floor. There were normally 3 small rugs laying around because Peanut didn't like to walk on the tiles, so she made sure that he could get into the kitchen by placing these rugs so that he could jump from one rug to another. However, there were none in the kitchen, and they weren't on the counters or anywhere that they could find. They also noticed that the trash can that was normally left outside was also gone. And so this is when Lori's mother, Arlene, and Casey, her father, would be notified of what was happening. So Eileen quickly arrived at her daughter's home to look around herself, and she would find that in Lori's bedroom she had this home phone which had a cord. However, the cord was missing. This is when Lori was officially reported missing, though the family was told that she would need to be missing for 48 hours before they could do anything.
We were first made aware of the situation on Tuesday, June the 13th of 2006. Lori's mom came down and reported to us that she had not seen or heard from her for several days. At that point, we immediately began to seek out and talk with acquaintances of hers, friends, people that she did things with, and of course weren't able to locate her. At this point, we still do not know the whereabouts of Lori. That's something that we desperately want to find out for the family. There may be someone that has some information that could be that one piece of the puzzle that makes us be able to turn the corner with this case. And we just urge anyone with any information, how trivial they may think it is, to contact us and let us be the judge of what is important or not.
And Lindsay was telling the police that the last time that she had talked to Lori, she was headed to that store on Saturday night and had this friend with her. And this friend was actually a 25-year-old man named Rick Ennis. So investigators found surveillance footage from the local Walmart for that night and saw Lori inside of the store. However, she appeared to be alone. But Lindsay claimed that Rick being on this phone call wasn't the only reason she was giving the police his name. She stated that Rick had given Lori a love letter telling her how he felt about her for the first time. And this was recently, and when Lori had read this, she told Lindsay that she was going to tell Rick that she just wanted to be friends. When investigators brought Rick in for questioning, he would say that he had met Lori because they both grew marijuana together. They had been friends for a while since Lori was in college, and he said on the day that she vanished, on that Saturday, they were together at her trailer, but he had left and she was still in the trailer and was fine, and he didn't know where she had gone from there. But Rick then gave a possible reason for her disappearance because he said Lori would often go and sell the weed that they were making and that she had some connections with some unsavory characters. Though the investigators had a hard time believing this because they had searched her trailer and they found no evidence that she was growing or selling drugs. They then collected different things from the apartment that could be evidence, such as the doorknob and her bed sheets. 4 days later, Lori had still not been located, and this is when her missing 2005 Mazda Tribute car was found abandoned in an empty cul-de-sac on DeKalb Street, and it was fully engulfed in flames at 4:41 a.m. Lori was not found inside. There were no remains inside the vehicle, and the location seemed to have no connection to Lori. However, it did have a bit of a connection to their prime suspect at the time, Rick Ennis, because he worked at a bowling alley nearby this cul-de-sac at one point. Now, they brought him back in for questioning once again, and that is when they noticed that he had suspicious scratches on his arms. When they asked him for his story once again, he began telling them, but it had many inconsistencies from the first time. And due to the car being in flames, this missing persons case had become a possible homicide investigation.
Her behavioral pattern, the fact that she had a job, the fact that she maintained close contact with her family, with her friends. She had just purchased the vehicle. She had a pet at home that she tended to regularly. All those things considered, and the fact that all of that stuff ended at one time would lead us to believe that it may be something more than just a missing persons case.
Investigators then searched Rick's car and they found a knife, fuzzy handcuffs, and a box of cleaning supplies inside. But Lori's friends and family, they knew Rick. He was Lori's friend. They trusted him, and Lori's mom would say that Rick even called her while they were looking for Lori and he had said that she had gone to a big drug deal. Lori's parents had met Rick one Christmas because Lori didn't want him to be alone for the holidays, and so she invited him over. But why would he be alone without family on the holidays? Well, Rick was really Daryl Richard Ennis, and he had been in trouble with the law before. Now, normally these cases, that means that they have some sort of criminal record, petty crimes, an obvious pattern of repeat offenses, escalating over the years, but Rick was a bit different. You see, back when he was 12 years old, he had murdered his parents. This was his mother and stepfather in a trailer in Montgomery, Alabama. He had no help from another adult. He was not coerced into doing this. On March 3rd of 1993, Rick would shoot his mother, 41-year-old Linda Ruth Dolly Flowers, in the face and proceeded to beat her with a baseball bat. When his stepfather, 40-year-old Eddie Joe Flowers, arrived home at work, Rick shot him in the face as well. Rick had lived with these dead bodies inside the home for 2 days and proceeded to go to school without telling anyone or admitting what he had done. On March 5th, when no one knew that these two people had been murdered, a policeman would find Rick walking down the road at night. He had just crashed the family car, so people had called in to the police station to let them know about this. So this policeman was there, and he would find Rick with a gun. Rick would then say that the family car had collided into a fence, and when the policeman asked where his parents were, he calmly stated, "I killed them both." There were no tears, no emotion, no remorse. Rick would lead police to the mobile trailer where his family lived, and actually there was a show that was filming these officers called MPD at this time, and so it actually recorded them going into this trailer and finding his mother and stepfather. In the bedroom, detectives would find the stepfather's body as well as the mother's body, which was actually covered in a velvet blanket, and there was a single rose on her chest. They would find a baseball bat with blood on it, and they would also find a to-do list written by Rick, and on this to-do list was to murder his 3 stepsisters. Rick confessed to killing his parents at this point, telling detectives that his mother wanted to move to another town, and he was mad because he didn't want to leave his school. He then was said to show no emotion, only speaking a handful of words. He appeared to be this quiet boy, but he was quite big for 12 years old. He was 5'9", he was 200 pounds, and his stepsisters were spoken to at this point, and they said that he never wanted to bond with the stepfather. And Rick was always making these threats against the family, stealing weapons, but they never really took him seriously as being a child that would do anything like this. But due to his age, Rick would be sent to a juvenile detention center for his parents' murder and conspiracy to commit murder of his stepsisters. He could not be tried as an adult under Alabama law. In fact, he was not tried at all. Those who knew Rick, though, said that he was a boy who had spent many years of his life shuffling from different housing projects to different trailers, and some said he had a really bad life. His mother had been married 4 times, had 6 children, and had actually divorced Rick's biological father when he was only 7 months old, and then Dolly and Eddie, his stepfather, had met in church. His attorney claimed that Rick had a history of physical and emotional abuse, that it bothered him that everybody had nicer stuff than him and would make fun of him for it, and his aunt claimed that he would get his stepsister's hand-me-downs because they were that poor. But Eddie Joe was also known as a very devoted father and stepfather to his kids. He always had a grin on his face, and he did everything for his family. Eddie was actually known as Elvis due to his sideburns, his colorful personality, and he was always singing. At the time of the murders, he and Dolly had been married for less than a year, and they had moved into this trailer together weeks prior. But Rick's stepsister said that no matter how much their father, Eddie, tried to be a part of Rick's life, he was very shut off from the whole entire family. And Eddie was said to respect this because he believed that it would just take time and that this new relationship would have to build, and that Rick was just dealing with it differently. So Eddie never pushed him. Eddie never forced him to, join the family or call him father or anything like that. But Rick just didn't want anything to do with anyone. And after he murdered his parents, some were saying that it was possibly because he was very protective of his mother and jealous of his stepfather. Others said it was because he was neglected and abused and a gifted boy driven to violence. But regardless, this 12-year-old had committed murder twice and had plans to do it 3 more times. But he would stay in juvenile detention for the next 9 years. He escaped twice, was caught again, and then he was released as soon as he turned 21, simply due to his age and not any sort of rehabilitation. He was also not put on any type of parole, and he moved to Auburn, Alabama. Then the records of these murders were sealed due to being juvenile records. Now, 13 years after the murder of his parents and 4 years since he was released, Rick Ennis was the prime suspect in the disappearance of his friend, Lori. Investigators believed he had murdered Lori. He had stolen her car, set it on fire, and then stayed at home with her dog Peanut to take care of him for days after the murder. Though there was no body and there was no evidence of murder. There just was not enough to charge him, and so he was released, and Lori's disappearance went cold. The next year in 2007, investigators would speak to Rick's roommate at the time of the murder. This roommate wanted to give them 3 rugs that he had found that Rick had brought into the home and he believed belonged to Lori. Investigators found that they were similar to the ones described in Lori's home. Still, the evidence against Rick was slim and he was a free man. And meanwhile, Lori's dog Peanut was adopted by her mother Arlene. And Arlene would say that every time they spoke about Lori, they said her name. Peanut would run from the other side of the house, like he was asking where she was, like he thought that she was there. And Arlene said that that dog never forgot her.
Just not knowing is hell. Just have no idea. Lori had no enemies at all. I hope she's still alive. Let me put it to you that way. As a parent, you always have hope. She would never leave her little dog that she left. We were close. If there was something bothering her, I'm sure she would have told me.
9 years later, in 2016, Special Agent Mark Whitaker began reinvestigating this case. He was looking over Rick's multiple interviews from back in 2006, and they knew he wasn't telling the truth. And then they found a forensic report from 2007 where they had tested the doorknob and the bed sheets from Lori's home for DNA. The blood on the doorknob and the semen on the bed sheets matched Rick Ennis. There was also a match of Rick's DNA on the rugs that his roommate had given to the police. So 2 years after this, in 2018, the Alabama State Bureau of Investigation opened a cold case unit, and this was the first case that they were determined to solve. The cold case unit would then find that a cigarette butt had been located near Lori's car when it was found engulfed in flames, but it had never been tested. When they tested this, Rick Ennis was not only connected to that trailer, but also to the crime scene where the missing car was found. He was finally named a killer for his 3rd victim in his life in August of 2018. This was 12 years after Lori had vanished. However, Rick had been a free man for all this time, so investigators had to locate him, and they found him in Pilot, Virginia, where he had allegedly quickly moved after being released in Lori's disappearance. In fact, they tried to do another interview with him at one point, and he had already fled Auburn, and he never returned ever in that time period. But he was found to be engaged to a school librarian, and he insisted that he was innocent as he was extradited back to Alabama. But Lori's father, Casey, said that they hoped this arrest would bring justice to their daughter.
That last week, the Lee County Grand Jury indicted Mr. Darrell Richard Ennis on 2 counts of capital murder. 1 count was murder involving a burglary, and the other count is a murder involving a kidnapping. He doesn't want to be found. So through the assistance of the U.S. Marshal's Office, we received information, an address, and a location in South Carolina. We went to South Carolina to work with U.S. Marshals to apprehend Mr. Ennis. Well, the address that we had, the location that we had, turned out he wasn't there. But the intel that was obtained there by the U.S. Marshals was a couple of addresses in Virginia. Let me tell you something, within 30 minutes of finding this information out in South Carolina, they had a group of close to 100 agents working with the U.S. Marshals Task Force, assembled and briefed and ready to roll in Virginia. And just a few minutes after 2 o'clock Eastern time on yesterday, they took Mr. Ennis into custody. No fight, no nothing. You talk about being overwhelmed with force. They overwhelmed him and they took him into custody.
After delays due to COVID, the trial would start on April 1st of 2022, and prosecutors were seeking the death penalty, saying that Rick was romantically obsessed with Lori and killed her after she refused to be more than friends. Then he set her car on fire. And it was revealed that on June 9th, the day prior to Lori vanishing, Rick had run out of gas in his car, and he had called a friend to ask him to bring a gas tank to help fill him back up. So when the friend arrived with his gas tank, Rick asked him if he could have the gas tank. And this friend told him no. And investigators had found a gas tank in the woods next to Lori's burning car. Investigators also believed that the missing phone cord was used to bind Lori during her murder. But defense said that there was no proof of a crime. There was no body, no evidence. On April 4th, friends and coworkers of Lori's would testify, and Lindsay, her best friend, said that she received a phone call around 7 p.m. the day that Lori had vanished, so around 30 minutes after they had talked about Lori going to the store and then coming straight there. But this only rang once, so Lindsay couldn't pick it up, and when she called her back, it went straight to voicemail, and then she could not get her to answer whatsoever. And when Lindsay went to Lori's home a few days later, she looked at the answering machine, the home phone answering machine, and it had 0 messages, even though she knew herself that she was leaving lots of messages for Lori to get back to her. Lindsay said that she had even texted Rick the day that they had went to Lori's home and found all of this and asked if he had seen her. And he said that he was worried as well, but she was probably fine. That is when some of the detectives on the case would start testifying, with Charles Buckner saying that they found a Budweiser beer bottle near the car where it was burned. And Detective Buckner said that he placed a tracking device on Rick's vehicle during the search of his vehicle to track his whereabouts. Officer Randy Armstrong would testify that he searched Rick's car, and that's when he would find that this car had actually been sold to Rick by Lori the day prior to her vanishing. He had found tiki torches inside, Clorox cleaning wipes, flare bottles, shoe polish, 2 bottles of air fresheners, Febreze, growing formula, bathroom cleaner, pH test, a cloth, and a cleaning brush. And cold case detective Chris Murray testified that when he went back to Lori's home about a week later, he found a stretched out coat hanger at the bottom left side of Lori's bed. On April 7th, former coworkers and roommates of Rick would take the stand. His coworker Jeremy Brooks said that he was the one that Rick had asked to bring the gas can to help him fill up, and then he wouldn't give the gas can to him. However, he said that later, when Lori vanished, one of his gas cans went missing. Rick's former roommate then testified, and he was Abram Sissons, and he said that Rick told him he was in love with a woman who disappeared. But Abram didn't know Rick's full name, and that is when he would find a piece of evidence with his full name in it. And that is when he Googled that, and he found all of this evidence and possible connections to this murder of Lori. And so Abram actually said he was too scared to sleep at his apartment. He went to sleep at his girlfriend's, and then the police escorted him to his apartment the next day. It was trashed, and also Rick had turned the oven on, and inside was glass with liquid and a burn wick hanging out of it. A more recent coworker of Rick's, so somebody who knew him in Pilot, Virginia, rather than in Auburn, this was a man named Terry Booth, had said that he once asked Rick why he moved from Auburn, and he said that he had gotten into some trouble and needed to get out of town. Now, Rick allegedly told him that he was talking to a girl, she only wanted to be friends, and so he moved away from her. Then Terry said that Rick told him, "I had to take care of some business and strangle a bee." When Terry was asked on the stand if Rick told him where it happened, he said he made a remark to indicate the location by saying that she was a white piece of trailer park trash. But then Rick Ennis would testify in his own defense and claim that he was good friends with Lori, that they met at a local restaurant by one of his coworkers, and they would sometimes have sex, but it was consensual, and they had only been intimate 2 months prior to her disappearance and then a week before, and that was it. He said that Lori was moving soon, and so she had asked him to return the key to her home, and the day he tried to do so, she wasn't home, so he had left the key, and he also left her a love note confessing how he felt about her. He said that on June 10th, the day she vanished, he had accidentally locked his keys in his car when he was over there at her trailer, and they had used a coat hanger to open it up, which is why that was found in Lori's home. He said the scratches seen on his arms were from his dog Gracie, and he didn't kill Lori. The prosecution said, "Is there anything else you'd like to blame on your dog?" But Rick insisted that Lori was supposed to meet a drug dealer to sell the marijuana they were growing together, and his defense said that someone had planted the cigarette with his DNA on it at the scene of the burning vehicle. When Rick was asked where he dumped Lori's body, he said, "I did not dump Lori's body anywhere." When he was asked why he had a scrub brush in his car, he said that his female dog would go into heat once a month and he used a brush to clean up. Rick said that he never told his former coworker anything about Lori, especially not strangling her, and he did not work at the bowling alley that was near where Lori's car burned. After this, it was time for jury deliberation, and they actually asked the judge for a computer to watch the surveillance footage of Lori at Walmart and also listen to the recording of the phone call that Rick had made from jail to his former boss. However, even though the jury had been told all about Lori's murder, they were not allowed to be told about Rick's prior crimes, and that when he was only 12 years old, he had committed his first murders. So 13 days after the trial began, Rick Ennis was found guilty of first-degree capital murder, burglary, and first-degree capital murder, kidnapping, and he was sentenced to life without parole. This was actually Lori's mother's choice, who decided the best option for the family was to not seek the death penalty and go through that lengthy appeals process, but Rick was adamant that he was innocent and he appealed his conviction. Rick's new fiance, the school librarian, does not believe that he killed Lori. And she said that when he killed his parents, it was not because he wanted to, that he had a need to kill. It was due to the horrific things that his mother did. She said that he was the most compassionate person that she ever knew and that she fell in love with his brain first. And she is actually an amateur genealogist who found out through her work that he had killed his family. He hadn't even told her this. But Rick then had explained to her that his mother had molested him, and then he lost it and killed them. Even though back when he was 12, he had admitted that he simply didn't want to move. But Rick told 48 Hours that those murders are the biggest regret of his life and that he didn't kill anyone else. But 2 days after this verdict was given, Rick's stepsister spoke out for the first time, saying they wanted to wait for sentencing for Lori to get her justice, and now they wanted to use their voices. They made a public statement confirming that Rick had killed his stepfather and his mother and even escaped the juvenile detention center twice, and then he was released. And they believe that Alabama law did not handle juvenile murder cases properly. Donna, Angela, and Tina have said, "We would like to begin by sending our condolences to Lori Ann's mom, family, and friends. We pray for you daily and hope today's verdict will bring you some form of peace and closure. In March 1993, our lives were forever changed at the hands of Rick Ennis. He brutally murdered our father, Eddie Flowers, and stepmother, his mother, Dolly Flowers. Ennis was just 12 years old at the time of the murders, and he was put into the juvenile justice system. Many people believe that children do not commit crimes such as murder, but we know that is not true. The violence that happens in this state and across this nation has no age limit. The court shouldn't be bound by a state law that says children less than 14 can't be tried as adults. This case is living proof. If Ennis would have received the punishment he deserved when he murdered 2 people at 12 years old, Lori Ann wouldn't have lost her life at the hands of this evil person. The state of Alabama must change their laws. We have missed our daddy for 29 long years. So today, when Rick Ennis was found guilty, our family could breathe a sigh of relief and know that justice has finally been served." These stepsisters were victims of Rick Ennis's behavior, his anger, his abuse, his threats, and nobody taking any of that seriously due to the fact that he was a child. They had to then grieve the murder of their father and their stepmother in the home that they lived in by their brother, who had no remorse. And then instead of their monster going to trial and getting justice just because of his age, regardless of his actions, he was given a lenient juvenile sentence with an early release. These 3 stepsisters had been on the list to be killed next by Rick, and they had no peace in knowing that he was locked up because he escaped twice and he got no punishment for that, and then just because he was 21, he was released into the world once again. And because of that, he went on to kill once again, getting away with it for 12 years. And this isn't a unique case. I want to make that very clear. This happens all over the world with children acting as adults, committing these heinous crimes and not being punished for their actions, and in their eyes getting away with it, and then going on to commit more, sometimes worse crimes in the future because they got away with the first ones. No justice seems to come for the victims of an evil child. Most of the time, these victims must wait until the child grows into an adult who hurts another for it to finally be taken seriously. Why are we waiting for more violence? When does this cycle end? Lori's mother, Arlene, said that she had waited 16 years for the man she knew killed her daughter to be held accountable for ending her life. She said that Lori, her brother who has since died of cancer, and her father who has since died of COVID are now all celebrating justice in heaven with their dog Peanut. There is a passion within me to talk about killer children and how their punishment never fits the crime. And as much as we want to believe all children are innocent or can be rehabilitated, evil can exist in a small human, and there is no rehabilitation being done because they will say, give them an easy punishment. They'll be rehabilitated, but there is no work or no test to see if this is actually occurring or if we are just releasing them because they have simply gotten older. Let me know your feelings on this. Please be respectful. It's something that is very near and dear to my heart. And I think that this case is just a huge lesson that needs to be heard by people all over the world. And if we are not diligent, these killer children, they can become killer adults. And more victims are taken. If a killer had been properly punished, would she still be alive today? But don't forget to speak up. Your voice is powerful enough, and I love you to absolute pieces.